A scientific con game. We learn a lot of things in the world today that are just fiction. Science believes in, it's mixed in with science. Science is just what we can see, test, demonstrate, and know. But there's a lot of things that are mixed in with that really become just a con game. Um, there's things that we can't know, and there's a lot of things that we could know if we just looked at things a little differently. The Bible, I believe, is written by God. I'm not trying to hide that from anybody um, with this video. So we're definitely going to look at what the Bible says. But I believe biblically, the Bible definitely teaches we have a geocentric Earth. The Earth is not spinning. You can look up at the stars at night and know for sure the Earth ain't spinning. We're not going around the sun is going around us. Stars, I do not believe, are nearly the size that a lot of scientists would claim they are, and I don't think there's any possible way that they could actually know or even have a very good guess at what size these stars supposedly are. And I certainly do not believe that the stars emit tons and tons of heat. We'll look at verses later that indicate that the sun gives heat to everything. There's nothing that isn't affected by the heat of the sun. And if that's true, the sun isn't some mediocre star like a lot of pseudoscientists would have us believe, and even a lot of genuine scientists that are just not, they've been deceived their own self. We have a lot of stuff in science that gets really messed up. So let's start looking at a few Bible verses, and we'll look at a little more of this stuff as the video progresses. 1 Timothy 6:20 says, O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings, and oppositions of science falsely so called. So it's science falsely so called that this video has big problems with. Science that's genuine, seeable, testable, demonstratable science, God has no issue with, and neither do I. But there's another thing that we need to look at for just a second, too. The Bible indicates that without a proper fear of God, we can't have proper wisdom, knowledge, or understanding. There is a wisdom of the world that, I forget the Bible verse, I think it's in 1 Corinthians, it says, For after that in the wisdom of God, the world through its wisdom knew not God. So there is a wisdom of the world, but it isn't real wisdom. But let's look at a few Bible verses that indicate that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of all these things. Proverbs 9:10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. Proverbs 1:7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Psalm 111 verse 10 says, The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. His praise endureth forever. Now I want to start looking at some verses that scientifically are going to give some challenges to scientists. I think scientists that see this video ought to definitely try and prove the Bible wrong in what it says. There's no way it's going to be proven wrong, but it's an interesting challenge anyway. Psalm 148 verse 4 says, Praise him, ye heavens of heavens, and ye waters that be above the heavens. I believe that at the end of all the stars and the end of our entire universe, we've got a water barrier. It probably is an ice shield, I would guess, but I could be wrong on that too. But this clearly talks about waters above the heavens, and I definitely believe that it's absolutely true. Now, thus series of verses is going to look at some really serious stuff, showing that the earth is geocentric. Psalm 19, 1 through 6 says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament sheweth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night sheweth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoiceth as a strong man to run a race. His going forth is from the end of the heaven, and his circuit unto the ends of it. And there is nothing hid from the heat thereof." This challenges what a lot of science claims in some very huge ways. The Bible indicates there's nothing that's hid from the heat of the sun. That would indicate that the sun is the biggest source of heat in the universe. So these stars that scientists want to play around with as though they're like suns and super suns and miniature suns and things like that, that's a hoax. It's a lie. And if they could actually prove that, it'd prove the Bible false, and that ain't ever going to be done, because God is the author of the Bible. But anyway, good luck trying to prove it, and it might be a good challenge for some scientists out there to actually look into this a little bit deeper, see what you can actually prove, and what actually is just scientific nonsense. We find in the book of Genesis that the earth was created before the sun, moon, and stars. And Genesis 1, 14 through 18 indicates that God made the sun, moon, and stars on the fourth day. So those verses say this, "And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven, to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days, and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven, to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also, and God set them in the firmament of the heaven, to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good." Now this is the fourth day, and there's a whole lot of things that need to be paid attention to here. The sun, moon, and stars are for day. They're to divide the light from the day. They're made for light on the earth, primarily. And so any scientists that have these ideas that it took the light tons and tons of time to get to the earth, that's ridiculous. But light was created before the stars anyway. There was light on day 1. But day 4, God created light sources, the sun, moon, and stars. And they're there for the earth primarily. And they're, you look up at the stars, if the earth was rotating like pseudoscientists would like to claim, it would have to rotate once every 24 hours. Well, if you look up at night in the sky at the stars, all of the stars in the sky should be doing a complete circle every 24 hours as well, not because they were moving, but because the earth is moving if this were so. But this isn't so. The earth isn't moving. The stars move a little bit, but they don't move like they should if the earth was spinning around once every 24 hours. 1 Corinthians 15:41 I want to look at for a minute. "There is one glory of the sun, and another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars, for one star differeth from another star in glory." So the sun is obviously indicated as the greatest glory in the Bible. The moon is a second, and the stars are a third. And then star differs from star in glory, the Bible clearly indicates. So of course there are brighter stars and dimmer stars, but anybody can tell that looking up at the sky anyway. But the Bible also does indicate that stars differ from stars in glory. And one of the things that I think would be interesting scientifically is to find out if the stars actually generate any heat at all, or if maybe they like the moon, are simply reflecting the light from the sun. There's a lot of things scientifically that have to take on a whole new meaning once you get very serious about dealing with the Bible. Isaiah 24:20 says, "The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard, and shall be removed like a cottage, and the transgression thereof shall be heavy upon it, and it shall fall and not rise again." The reason this verse is important to look at is it's the only verse that I'm aware of in the whole Bible that suggests any movement at all to the earth. And so, I mean, you know, we have earthquakes and things like that, and people feel them from a long ways away from just a tiny little, movement in the earth's earth, in the ground, We feel that immediately. But yet we're not supposed to feel spinning around every 24 hours, There's nothing at all that would indicate that. Let's look at some other verses here that throw out some scientific things that scientists ought to at least consider carefully and might have a good challenge to look into and to try and prove wrong or try and prove right or whatever you want to do. Joshua 10:12 through 14 says this, "Then spake Joshua to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said, in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Aishalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of the heaven, and hasted not to go down, about a whole day. And there was no day like that before it or after it, that the Lord hearkened unto the voice of a man. For the Lord fought for Israel." End quote. Now this verse, whether you believe in geocentrism or heliocentrism, would be interesting because it clearly shows a miracle from God. God clearly either stopped the sun from moving and stopped the moon from moving, or he stopped the earth from moving and stopped the moon from moving. Either way, you've got two major bodies that have to be stopped from moving. And I think that, for God, nothing's impossible or even hard for God. I believe he stopped the sun and stopped the moon, just like the Bible clearly indicates. He stopped them both from moving. Let's look at another verse really quick from the Bible, because it brings up some more scientific things to think about. Revelation 8, verses 10 and 11 say, "And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers, and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. And the third part of the waters became wormwood. And many men died of the waters because they were made bitter." So this is interesting here. It says a major star fell to the earth. If the sun is kind of just an average sized star, It's supposed to be, I believe it's 1,000,000 times bigger than the Earth. So the Bible very clearly is talking about a major star, and it very clearly is not the sun. It's not like the sun. It even says it's burning as it were a lamp. And that to me makes me question, was the star generating any heat before it came through the Earth's atmosphere? Or did it start burning as a lamp as it comes through the Earth's atmosphere? And it does do some serious damage, so stars do have some definite size to them, but it doesn't destroy the Earth or even come close to totally demolishing the Earth, and the Bible very clearly indicates that this is a major star. Another thing I wanted to look at here scientifically, this is looking at what scientists would claim today. A light year is supposed to be a distance of about 5.8 trillion miles. The diameter of the Earth is supposed to be around 7,917.5 miles, and I don't know if that's around the equator or going north and south, because it would have different diameters depending on where you measured it at. But one thing to think about here, if a light year is 5.8 trillion miles, and the diameter of the Earth is under 8,000 miles, if you divide the diameter of the Earth into the distance that would be a light year, you end up with a number that's 742,481,844 is the number that I got in dividing these two numbers. The only way that I'm aware of that we definitely can know a third point without actually getting to the third point would be triangulation, where you know the distance between 2 points and you know the exact angle from each of those 2 points to a third point. Now, if you wanted to even see and measure something that was 1 light year away from the Earth, if you had one person on one side of the Earth and another person on the other side of the Earth, looking at an object that was supposed to be 1 light year away, according to what scientists would even claim, this would be the same thing as having 2 people standing 1 millimeter apart, and the third point that they're looking at is 461 miles away. That would be utterly absurd to think that they would get a good triangulation method. You'd have 2 perfectly straight lines. If they're 1 millimeter apart and 461 miles away, you wouldn't have 2 angles. You would have a distance between the 2 angles that are straight lines, and then you wouldn't have any angle at all. I don't know of any type of equipment that could give us any type of angle at all if you're measuring 1 millimeter apart at 461 millimeters or 461 miles away. And there's some other stuff I want to look at here too. We've sent probes into space, and you would think that maybe we could learn some pretty interesting stuff with probes. But one of the interesting things about our probes is the furthest that I can find, at least on a quick internet search, the farthest that we have sent a probe into space is around 11 billion miles. That seems like a fair distance, but compared to trillions of miles, which is what you're dealing with for even a single light year, that's nothing. We haven't even begun to scratch the surface. That would be less than 1 light day, because in 1 day, light speed is supposed to be around 186,000 miles per second, and that's very fast, and I believe it's also partially wrong, because you can find on the internet that they've sped light up to 300 times the speed of light and slowed light down to a dead stop. So the speed of light, I believe, can actually be different. But at the 186,000 miles per second, in just one day, the light would have traveled over 16 billion miles away, which would be less than how far we've sent our furthest probe out into space. So anyway, I wanted to shoot this video and give some things to think about, because scientifically, I believe that we think we know a whole lot more than we really do know. But anyway, thank you very much for your time. I hope that this video has been a bit of a challenge, a bit of something to think about for people. And anyone who's not saved who happens to be watching this video, read John chapter 3. It's a very important chapter. John 3 verse 3, Jesus says a man must be born again. And read verses 18 and 36. They both say basically the same thing. He that has the Son has everlasting life. He that does not have the Son shall not see life, but the wrath of God abides on him. Anyway, thank you very much for your time.